Sometimes, do you ever feel like your brain just can't keep up, like you're drowning in information, but somehow you're not processing it fast enough? Well, here's the deal. Your brain can only handle about 126 bits of information per second. That's it. According to cognitive psychologist Dr. Mihaly, I can't say his surname, so I'm going to put it up on a slide. He wrote the book Flow. Anyway, the human brain's conscious processing capacity is around 126 bits of information per second. This is based on studies of attention and perception, where he estimated that understanding one person speaking requires about 60 bits per second, meaning we can fully focus on at most two people talking at once before becoming overwhelmed. However, unconscious processing is vastly greater. The entire brain processes about an estimated 11 million bits of information per second from sensory inputs, but only a tiny fraction reaches conscious awareness. So let's explore how this affects productivity, decision making, or focus if you are a busy professional or entrepreneur. So, if you're constantly distracted, feeling overwhelmed, or tired, you're probably operating below your true potential. But what if I told you that you can actually increase this capacity? And no, it's not some sci fi brain chip, not yet anyway. The answer lies in strength training, optimal nutrition, and how you structure your focus. So, stick with me for the next few minutes and I'll show you how. Okay, so let's dig into this and how strength training enhances brain processing. Let's start with strength training. You probably associate lifting weights with building muscle, but did you actually know it boosts brain function too? Research shows that resistance training enhances cognitive abilities, especially memory, attention, and executive function. Another review found that strength training leads to functional changes in frontal lobe, the part of the brain responsible for problem solving and decision making. So if you're skipping the gym thinking it's just about aesthetics, think again. Resistance training isn't just making you stronger, it's making you smarter. And then obviously one of those studies, so this is from the first study, that I've pulled up the short conclusion, and based on obviously what I've said is based on our analysis, resistant exercises and resistance training. So resistant exercises includes like things like running or rowing, stuff like that. And obviously resistance training includes weighted exercises. Evoked substantial functional brain changes, especially in the frontal lobe, which were accompanied by improvements in executive functions. Furthermore, resistance training led to lower white matter atrophy and smaller white matter lesion volumes. However, based on a relatively small number of studies available, the findings should be interpreted cautiously. Now, obviously, within all scientific studies, they do try to think about things critically and analyze things critically. And there isn't a huge amount of studies that back this up, but they are ever increasing. And the more we are seeing people go to the gym, resistance train, whether it is through resistance exercise or resistance training, more and more data is coming out how this improves brain function, but also longevity of life, right? And obviously they've talked about hence future studies are required to investigate underlying neurobiological mechanisms to verify whether the positive findings can be confirmed and transferred to other needy cohorts, such as adults with dementia, sarcopenia, and dynapenia. So this is from the same study, and it's kind of like expanded visual of how resistance training or resistant exercises creates a molecular change from the stress you're putting on the body, right? Obviously, it's controlled stress. And then you get this neurochemical receptor changes, which feed downstream, eventually leads to cognitive functions. But obviously, there is a process of this over time through repetitions, repeating things, and obviously getting better at it, improving your physical conditioning. And one thing we need to realize that is a lot of people don't understand that when they think about going to the gym, they think of it as just like, oh, I'm just training my muscles. Well, that's not really what happens. Your muscles is a byproduct, right? So let's say I go and do some squats. So once my body responds to the squat, firstly by enhancing my nervous system, right? The speed at which my nervous system fires and how quick it can adapt to required skills, right? So this is why when you see like high level athletes, they move. So, for example, gymnasts, their nervous system is very, very highly tuned, right? It's like a performance sports car, where someone who's can't do those skills, they're like driving around in a banger, right? So when you do resistance training, especially heavy strength training, you first get this nervous system adaptation, which feeds into improved and enhanced brain function, right? Your nervous system is an extension of the brain, okay? And then obviously, once we get that nervous system adaptation, what then happens is you get skeletal muscle. Sorry. First you get bone adaptation, and then you get skeletal muscle adaptation. So we get CNS adaptation, then that signals to the bones that it can grow denser and stronger. Yeah, and obviously then the connective tissue, and then what attaches to all that is muscle. So muscle is just like the last adaptation, even though you're kind of like immediately training it, or you feel like you're immediately training it. Anyway, so downstream, we get this functional and structural brain changes via the metabolic processes and via the CNS. That leads into benefits in terms of like socio-emotional changes, which include sleep, stress, mood, pain, etc. And then obviously that makes you feel better, you function better, sleeping better because of your strength training and exercising well, which means you're going to have more energy in the day. You're going to tolerate stress better, which means you're not going to get overwhelmed, and you're going to do more and get more out of your day. And obviously there's lots of studies that show that strength training reduces your perception to pain. So generally, you get this socio-emotional changes, which are all positive. And then downstream from that, you get enhanced cognitive functions, which are executive functions, attention, memory, decision making, and information processing. Okay, so this is quite a kind of complicated process, but when we look at it like this, it becomes very clear. Now looking at nutrition and brain processing speed. What you eat literally fuels your brain. Without the right nutrients, you are not just feeling sluggish, you're limiting your brain's processing speed. And I know like a lot of people feel like they're eating well, they kind of think they are eating well, or they think they're doing it right, or they have a good diet. But time and time again, I've probably onboarded at least 200 clients through my metabolism assessment. And every time I put them through that, there's a huge gap between what they think they know and what is actually optimal for them at that time, right? And I use that assessment it's basically like an MOT for your car. So I give the person an MOT for their metabolic engines and see what's going on there. And obviously I've coached a lot more people, but I've onboarded 200 people through that process, right? And every time there's a huge gap between what people think is good in terms of what they're eating nutritionally and what is actually optimal, all right? So for example, choline found in eggs, beef, fish has been shown to reduce the risk of dementia by 23%. And foods rich in omega-3s, antioxidants, and polyphenols like fatty fish, berries, and leafy greens are linked to improved cognitive function. So if you're living off processed junk and caffeine crashes, you're not giving your brain the tools it needs to operate at peak capacity. Proper nutrition plays a role in cognitive health. Okay, looking at optimizing focus and cognitive load. So most people likely fall below this 126 bit per second capacity in everyday situations because of 4 reasons. We're going to look at them: cognitive overload, lack of deep focus, cognitive fatigue, emotional and physiological states, right? So firstly, looking at cognitive overload, modern life bombards us with far more information than we can consciously process. Social media, emails, notifications, and multitasking drain attention, reducing effective processing speeds. So what you can do, and what I strongly suggest people do to improve your focus and limit cognitive overload, is when you're on screens, use blue light blockers, turn off all notifications on your phone, unless it's like you're like I don't know, a fireman or a policeman or something. You don't need notifications pinging up on your phone all the time. Turn them all off, and then you can just select who needs to ring you as an emergency bypass. And if you need to check work emails, you can just check it. You don't have to have these 100 million email notifications coming up. It drains your attention. Okay, so moving on. So number 2 is lack of deep focus. The brain works best in a state of deep work, as Cal Newport describes. Constant distractions mean most people rarely use their full cognitive potential at any given moment. Number 3, cognitive fatigue. Mental energy is finite. As the day progresses, decision fatigue and stress reduce our ability to process information efficiently. And number 4, emotional and physiological states. Stress, poor sleep, and inadequate nutrition impair cognitive function. A well-rested, focused person is more likely to operate closer to peak capacity. So for high-performing entrepreneurs and professionals, managing cognitive load through structured focus, for example, time blocking, deep work, proper recovery, can all help to maximize that 126-bit processing limit. Now, assuming that you've adjusted your lifestyle, you've started training effectively, strength training, and you're optimizing your diet. So assuming you've got that, you're lifting and eating optimally, let's talk about how to optimize your focus and optimize cognitive performance. Because even with a strong brain, distraction will kill your productivity. So here are 3 science-backed strategies. Number 1, eliminate multitasking. Remember, your brain has a strict 126-bit per second limit. Every time you switch tasks, you waste energy. Instead of this, you use time blocking and batch similar tasks together. I tend to try to do this, but it never works. I'm trying to do 2 things at the same time just to try condense my work blocks, but I'm far more productive if I set a task, set myself 60 to 90 minutes, just get into flow state and try to get that completed instead of trying to message someone while I'm doing it kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Aim to use deep work sessions. So research shows we're most productive in 90-minute focus blocks. Aim to shut off distractions, put your phone away and get into flow state. And number 3, prioritize sleep and recovery. A lot of people are guilty of this, trying to function off 6 hours sleep, 5 hours sleep, going to bed at midnight, waking up at 5 and wondering why they're tired and they can't focus all the time, or why they're not improving in the gym, or why they're not achieving the adaptations that they want to see with their body. Maybe that's muscle growth, strength increasing, or fat loss, right? Your brain consolidates and processes information while you sleep. Lack of sleep leads to slower cognition and poor memory retention. Aim for 7 to 9 hours. And obviously, this is a range for most people. I think generally what I've found over the years is men can probably get away with 6 to 7, 8, and be okay. But I tend to see women need more, towards 8 to 9, even more sleep than that. Yeah. So do keep that in mind. So if you want to think faster, process more, and actually keep up with the demands of your busy life, here's the plan. Lift weights, eat the right foods, and structure your focus. Your brain has limits, but you're probably operating well below them. Implement these strategies and you'll see an immediate shift in energy, focus, and mental sharpness. And if you found this useful, hit that like button, subscribe, drop a comment, and I will see you on the next one.